Veena from Matar Cake, the channel that's about baking and much more. A warm welcome to my channel.
Today, let's see how to bake an old-fashioned treat, a super spongy hot milk cake. Unlike in other cakes, this recipe involves using very hot milk while preparing the batter. This is what gives the cake a unique taste and texture. It's so delicious, you'll want to make it again and again. So now, let's get started with baking a tasty hot milk cake right here at Matar Cake. The first thing you need to do for baking this cake, or any other cake for that matter, is prepare the baking pan. This is a 7-inch square pan that I've greased and dusted with maida, and I've also lined the bottom with parchment paper. You could line the sides too if you want. And instead of a square pan like this, you could also use a 7 or 8-inch round pan. Okay, now let's sift the maida or all-purpose flour and the baking powder. To this sieve, I'll add 1 1/4 cups, that's 160 grams of maida, and 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder. Let's mix these roughly and then sift the mix. Let's keep this aside and start preparing the batter. In this cake recipe, there are 2 important steps. The first is to beat the eggs really well till they are light and frothy. But you don't necessarily need an electric beater to do that. In fact, I'm going to whisk these 3 eggs with a hand whisk just to show you that you could easily make a nice, light and spongy cake this way too. You'll need to whisk the eggs for around 3 minutes. Pausing now and then to rest your hand, if you're using a hand whisk, that is. After that, we'll add in the sugar. This is 3/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar that I ground coarsely. It weighs 190 grams. Remember to measure the sugar first and then grind it. You could also use 190 grams of fine castor sugar instead. We'll add the sugar in 3 parts, whisking the eggs and sugar well for around a minute each time. Now let's add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and whisk the mix again for a minute. Next, we'll add in a 1/4 cup of oil. You could use any cooking oil that doesn't have a strong smell. We'll whisk the mix vigorously for around a minute or 2. Now let's gently stir in the sifted flour in 2 portions. That done, let's prepare the hot milk mixture. Into this vessel, I'll pour 150 ml, that's 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons of full cream milk. And to it, add 3 1/2 tablespoons of salted butter. I'll now turn on the heat and keep it on medium. Now for a hot milk cake, the milk has to be heated almost to boiling point. So what I'm going to do is heat this mix till the milk just starts boiling, and then turn the heat off and wait for a couple of minutes for its temperature to drop slightly before adding it to the batter. Now that the milk has come to a boil, I'll immediately turn off the heat. Before adding in the milk and butter mixture, I'll keep the whisk aside and begin using a spatula instead. And after waiting for 2 minutes, I'll now stir in the hot milk with continuous stirring. This is the second important step in this recipe. The milk has to be really hot when poured into the batter. Also, we have to make sure all the ingredients are well mixed and we have a smooth batter. Note the consistency of the batter at this stage. It's thinner than that of most cakes and has a pouring consistency. Let's pour the batter into our prepared cake pan. I'll tap the pan several times to release any trapped air bubbles. I'll also move a skewer through the batter as an added measure to ensure the batter contains no more than a few air bubbles. I'll now bake the cake in my preheated oven at 180 centigrade, that's 360 Fahrenheit, for around 35 minutes or till a skewer or toothpick inserted into it comes out clean. Here's our baked cake. It took 32 minutes to bake. After 20 minutes in the oven, it had started browning on top, and so I kept it covered with this piece of parchment paper for the last 10 minutes or so because I didn't want the cake to get over-browned. Instead of parchment paper, you could also use a piece of aluminium foil. I let the cake cool in the pan for around 20 minutes and then turn it out on a wire rack to cool completely. Let's peel off the parchment paper from the bottom of the cake. Our cake has baked uniformly. Our hot milk sponge cake is light, soft, and fluffy. And very, very tasty. It tastes somewhat like Mawa cake, and if you want to learn how to make Mawa cake, the link is up here and in the description box below. I really hope you'll give my recipe for hot milk sponge cake a shot. It's a quick and simple recipe and a no-fail one too. And believe me, when you make it at home, you'll love the taste. So go for it. Until we meet again, happy cooking!